Very good, Chris. All right. So obviously, welcome. So I suppose today's presentation is about the Wolgan Road reconstruction project, and I'm here. My name's Chris Dombeck. I'm here from GHD. I'm working with the project team, and we're going to present the multi-criteria analysis. So firstly, a warm welcome to everyone. We're conscious that there are people online that dialing in, so I think we'll be taking messages and questions as well online, as well as from the room. But we'll kick off, and we'll pass you over. Richard, please.
Firstly, thank you everyone for coming. It's good to see there's plenty of interest in this particular project. A very important project for Lithgow City Council, and I dare say one of the more expensive projects that Lithgow is likely to encounter for quite a while. And welcome to all our subject matter experts, all the technical people in the room that have come to tell you about the multi-criteria analysis and give you the technical background on it. But Lithgow City Council acknowledges past and present Wiradjuri elders of the Wiradjuri Nation, which we're standing on now, original custodians of the land on which Lithgow's communities reside. Council also extends respects to our neighbouring nations. And with that, hand over for initial remarks by Chris Wasser.
Afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming in this afternoon. So today is going to focus on the permanent solution or permanent alignment selection process. So we have GHD here today with Christoph and Andy from GHD who are taking us through the MCA process. I think we did send around a bit of a summary of what we're here to talk about, and we'll get into a lot of detail. There'll be opportunities for questions as we go through. I think you've got a number of hold points that you can ask for questions. And also we'll get to the end of the process of explaining the MCA. And then also we might just have some Q&A in regards to just updating. We've got some good progress on the interim works that is continuing in parallel with this activity. So got around an hour and a half allowed for that. We've got some people online as well. Toby or Max, we will have the opportunity for those to raise their hand and ask questions. So we'll also moderate for the questions so that everyone gets a chance to be included in this process.
Quite a few people on the Telegraph who aren't able to join.
Okay.
For some reason.
Unable to join the online. Okay. Okay. We'll take the IT issue off and see that should be
Just a quick question. Do we need sort of introductions, or does everyone know everyone?
We've got some broader.
Probably I needed to introduce myself for those who don't know me already. I've met quite a few of you. I'm just I'm the interim Director of Infrastructure and Project Delivery for Lithgow City Council, just here for a few months to fill in while Skirney recruits a new director. That's what I do now, is go around the stage just filling in for short periods like this. So been handed probably the biggest projects I've ever encountered. But it's certainly a very interesting job, and I'm fascinated by this whole process. And hoping that we've got some good news stories to tell you today, which I'm sure you'll be pleased to hear about, particularly with the opening of the old road. But I won't steal anyone's thunder with that. Hand it back to Chris.
If we're doing introductions, Chris Wasser, representing council. I have a project management business, Wasabi Group, and we're managing the full life cycle of the project from application to completion. We've also got Ian McLean from Transport for New South Wales with us as well in attendance. So Ian's part of the DRFA group within Transport for New South Wales. So welcome, Ian. Good to have you here. And also we've got I think Si on the call, who is part of New South Wales Reconstruction Authority. And as always, we've stated, we are not going off on a tangent ourselves here. We are part of a conglomerate of agencies trying to respond to this disaster event. So everything we're doing is lockstep with Transport for New South Wales and New South Wales Reconstruction Authority and obviously Council. So everything we're presenting tonight is supported and endorsed by the Executive Oversight Committee, which has been established to look after this process and provide a steering group response. Jim and Ross, did you want to maybe introduce yourselves? If anyone particularly may not know who you are, I'm sure they do, but just in case.
Ross Gurney, General Manager, and Jim McGee's been allocated more closely to this project, working in a slightly different role, so it's good to have him much more on board.
Okay.
Chris, there are people saying they're all in the waiting room.
Oh, in the lobby. Okay.
We've got a fair few people in the lobby. We've accepted them all, so I'll go into the back end and have a look in a sec.
The risk there, I've been in that situation myself before, is if we don't let them in quickly, they just think that something's gone wrong, it's not happening.
No, we're trying to deal with it.
Everyone that we've got in the lobby is now in the meeting. So what we'll do is we'll just work on the back end and see if we need to reissue those invites.
Yeah. In the worst case, this is recorded. Hopefully everyone will have a chance. There'll be multiple moments to be able to ask questions, and we'll be sharing everything that we're presenting here today on the project website. So I might hand over, unless there's anything else, we will get going, and I'll hand over to GHD with Christoph and Andy to take us.
Probably just a quick intro because I don't think I've met.
No. If you want to do something else.
Along with Andy, my name's Chris Stomach. I'm from GHD. I'm technical director of transportation, so technically involved planning and feasibility studies. So I've been asked to assist the team to develop an MCA process, which today's presentation is about. So that's a little bit about me, but Andy, some quick words.
Angola, I'm more on the actual technical design side of the road, having run similar schemes for other flood recovery projects sort of in mid-north coast and particularly in northern rivers. So we deliver some of those for Lismore and Armidale Council and various sort of things. So a lot of the designs we've done, we know the DIFA guidelines and what's allowed, as well as standard road design. So that's where we come in. And then, say Christoph said, put this into the MCA. Any questions? We good?
So I'll launch in. It is a formal presentation. I've got a few points where I'll pause and I'll invite questions. So we'd have a run sheet where we'll get to a certain point and we'll invite a bit of discussion and we'll progress forward. So, so let's kick off. So just a bit of an overview for today. So I'll just run through what today's about. Obviously, there are options that will be discussed and there'll be options subject to the MCA process. I'll explain what an MCA is. I'll give you a quick overview. There are tools available, and we're going to use a tool that's been developed by Transport New South Wales for this project. And I guess leading on to that, one of the things with an MCA is we need to develop project objectives. So we've got project objectives, and through those we can focus on criteria and measures about how we'll assess options. So I'll run through that, but also run through a bit of a challenge of an MCA. Like we want to try and make sure we've got criteria that we can measure and we can compare between options. So I guess what today is about is we're presenting draft criteria. So we're conscious that we want to ensure there's a degree of feedback and understanding. And I guess we're not necessarily the experts on all matters. So we're presenting draft criteria where we generally want to, check that we've included all criteria or we missed something, or I guess it's a question of maybe some criteria are more important than others. So that's what today's about. So I'll just run through what option scoring looks like to give you a sense of, what is an MCA and how does it work in practice. So I'll just show a bit of an example calculation. And then we'll delve into a feedback. So there'll be a feedback form that goes up tomorrow. We'll formally ask for feedback. And then I'll go through the next steps. So the next steps being where there's a period of feedback for 2 weeks we're seeking. Once that's in, we'll basically collect the feedback and we'll challenge and review the criteria we've prepared. We might amend them. And once we're comfortable with the criteria, and it includes feedback from the committee, we'll then take that back to the EOC to lock them down before we formally apply the MCA tool. So, options. So, Andy, I'll flick over you. Actually, no, so I've jumped.
No, I think you're right.
No.
Yeah, you jumped.
I have jumped, sorry.
You have jumped.
So, in terms of the presentation, so I'll go through the draft criteria. So, what is it? So, I'll run through these. Oh, sorry. The aim of today, I should go back one step. So, we're presenting draft criteria. So, draft criteria is in bold because they are that. We are seeking feedback. I'll run through the MCA process, run through the criteria measures, and I guess at the end of today, we're basically seeking feedback. So the background is the MCA process has been endorsed by the EOC. So it's a tool to assess options, and it'll help us select preferred option. So in terms of the EOC members, I'm sure you've come across it, but it's members from the Reconstruction Authority, so size on the call, Transport New South Wales is engaged, and also obviously Lithgow City Council. So that's a bit of background, but yes, Andy, let's launch in the options.
I think most of you have been involved with this for a while, I'm assuming. So the first two probably come as no surprise. It's the option 1D, which is the, you can see from back there, it's the part of the blue and then goes on to the red all the way down to the bottom of the valley. That's the fully compliant, Austroads compliant design, 10, 11 metres wide with the large cuttings that you've seen. Option 4 is a similar design, similar standard, but generally follows the donkey steps alignment. I'm saying generally because there are some big differences in, there's an area of very deep cutting to get through. There's another area of very high fill, obviously because donkey steps is very steep. So that has to balance out to get the correct gradients. But again, that's a full road width. Again, there's quite major cuttings and fill on there. The options we've been involved in more detailed with GHD. They are actually, I say detailed, it is a strategic alignment design. So it's one step even back from a concept, but it's to show that the design is feasible and is possible and can be done along that existing alignment. So option 1, which is directly comparable with these two, is obviously it's the yellow line of the existing Wolgan Road. We can't put them all on top of one another. And that is Austroads compliant again. That is 7 metre wide carriageway with verges, makes it about 10 metres. Generally, the edge of it forms the downslope edge, and most of that road is then cut back into the hillside as you're coming down the hill, would be on the left hand side. I think that might be my phone. Do that for me. And option 2 is the same alignment, but it's actually to really upgrade the existing road to make it back to where it was. It will have some benefits as well beyond that, because obviously we cut back in where the actual failures are. So there'll be probably about 10, 11 failures along the route. So the road will be cut back in those locations. So that will give a new cut face in those locations. So there are some benefits with it. In between those cuttings, the road will remain as it was before. So that's pretty much the difference with them. One of them goes full width. Option 2 is really to replicate what you had before. Option 2A is a hybrid between the two. So we've taken let's call it the do minimum, the option 2 alignment, but we've provided a lot of things which would be not only nice to have, but they provide quite a safety benefit. Most of those relate around the bends and the corners. So there's a bit of widening to cut those benches further back, which gives you better sight distance around corners. It allows vehicles to pass one either way around corners. So it gives quite a lot of safety benefit. So that's really the option. So we've got the full compliant alignments, the alignments you know about, a compliant comparable alignment, the do minimum to reinstate to DRFA guidelines, and then a hybrid between them.
So we've just put a pause there for any questions. Please.
So with the hybrid, the 2A option, those safety measures that you're talking about, Andy, they're principally focused on road safety rather than rockfall and slip safety, I think.
Principally, they do gain rockfall safety though by the more benching back in that you cut back, the more of that cut slope you cut, so the more fresh new cut face you've got, and you'll have a proper bench slope which will go up. They're not massive, they don't go 4 or 5 benches, it goes up, they're 10 metres high, so they're 10 metres bench, and I actually think any of them actually reach the second lot of 10. So there will be a bench and there'll be new cuts, so those areas where you've had slips will have new works on it again.
So we have had quite a bit of information about 1D and
before.
The first 2 options, donkey steps.
They are more detailed design. Yeah.
Where's GHD at with zone report on 1, 2 and 2A. Has that report been completed?
Okay, we've done, funny as that, we've done the drawings for all three. We've done the design report for all three actually, because I submitted the design report for option 2A on Thursday last week. The other ones have been in a little while now, and I literally got an email back this morning to say I got comments back from, I think it was RA and another party had actually given me comments back. So we have got another phase of design to incorporate comments, do changes and adjustments. But we have got a set of drawings. I think I showed some on the webinar 3 weeks ago, 4 or 5 weeks ago. They have developed quite a bit since then, obviously. I should say there actually is quite a lot of works. See in here, but you know, the large face for the first 200 meters or so. There's quite a bit of works on that face before you actually start coming down the hill in all three options.
So I realise that today's meeting is to look at the criteria rather than to look at
correct.
the detail.
And safety is one of those criteria. Yeah, I didn't think it will be.
Yeah.
In terms of timing of all this, and that's probably something you're going to get to later, I guess. But the community will get an opportunity to look at that report that you're in the process of finalising.
So the MCA report, in
No.
terms of how we get to preferred option, or
No, the actual options.
On the design report itself. So, like for you,
Yeah.
I assume so. Yeah,
Ultimately,
yeah,
I think
yeah.
we're just in that kind of cycle of getting reviewed and
Yeah.
comments coming back from transport and RA. So they're quite.
I'd be expecting it as an engineer. I'd be expecting it to end up being publicly viewable. It's written such that it can be. As I say, at the moment though, we've got a first lot of comments back. I think we're still due back from another party. I can't remember which one it is, and then we'll be incorporating. Then I think we've got about another 3-week design period to incorporate comments and tweak things up, including the report.
And yeah, I guess we're running
Yeah,
in parallel as well. So we've got this MCA process going. We've got the drawings being developed and being reviewed. Just because of the program that we're trying to push as fast as possible, we've got a number of parallel streams. But nothing in any of this that won't be released. But it just needs to be checked and finalised before we issue it out and comments adopted and tweaked and the EOC. I'm happy to kind of confirm release.
Has transport been able to send in its comments?
Just got an online question for you, Christoph. I've got Martin here, so I'm just going to unmute Martin. Martin, if you can hear me, I'm just going to let you ask your question. Go ahead, Martin. Are you able to share your question with us?
Yeah, thanks for that. I'm a little bit concerned about some of these comparisons, seeing the geotechnical work hasn't been done for any road except for the existing Wolgan Road. How can we compare the 2 or 3 or 4 options together in a multi-criteria analysis in the absence of any science or geotechnical work on the alternative lines into the valley?
Thanks, Martin.
so that's the geotech work on that sounds lacking on 1D and 4, because that's what I thought it was going. So now we have done geotech work on the existing road. I mean, there's got to be an inference with the geotech guys that they are similar ground. I mean, they're not going to be the same. I doubt it, but they should be pretty similar across on both faces. And a lot of the work that's done, I'm talking for WSP now, which is not really design, but a lot of that work is cutting. So it's cutting into rock. So it would vary, perhaps angle of repose of the rock and so on. But I don't think there'd be enough at this stage to make a difference in a multi-criteria analysis. If we had bridges with big piles and all sorts of things like that, then yes, it probably would. But I don't really see it being a lot of difference.
so if we'll get to a slide which explains how we're going to try and assess it. Yes, there's obviously a question of level of details in terms of the assessment done for each of the options. We're hopefully going to get to a point where there's, let's call it, a similar degree of information across options to allow a like-for-like comparison. So there's definitely a criteria or draft criteria we've alluded to that looks at geotechnical risk. and we'll be leaning on our colleagues in technical stream to basically, we're going to push them to try and allow for like analysis because, ideally with MCA, everything's to the right level, but sometimes some things may be more developed than others, but we're going to press on them to try and, give us whether it's comparable risk assessment in terms of risk profile between different alignments. But if you can hold that, I think, question, we'll hopefully get to it and answer it in a few more slides. So if there's no more questions,
Sorry, who are the colleagues in this? The reason I ask that is we've been told for 3 years that there's a very significant difference between the two sides of the valley.
So
we're not very, honestly, about that. We've been involved in the existing Wolgan Road. We're not very aware of what's been and is on the other side of the valley.
I think the other comments were on a theoretical base, same as yours. It wasn't based on
the existing side that we've got. They've obviously with the interim design going in, there's been quite ahead of what we're doing. That's had geotechnical investigation, and the guys from GHD that did that have been very involved in our design. Obviously, I find it hard to talk for the design done on the other side. We weren't involved in it.
So, Chris, coming back to the question, who are the colleagues that you're sort of referring to? Are they GHD?
Well, we'll be involved in WSP will be involved. They're obviously because they've got all the information, all the knowledge of the alignments on the other side. So they will feed us, as in Christoph, information and knowledge as we ask for it. So we'll need information from them. Yeah. So they'll be involved in, not involved in the MCA, but they'll be involved in providing knowledge or support the MCA.
Just sorry to interrupt. I know we've got questions. I'm just conscious of time. This room is booked, unfortunately, a couple of minutes after we're done. So,
okay.
Well, we've got more opportunities for questions soon.
Hopefully, some of those things will become clearer. So, I guess why we're doing an MCA. So, it is a tool, and it's a structured decision-making tool. So, it's it allows us to I'll probably go in terms of the benefits. It's structured, so the defined criteria. We align them back to objective. It's transparent, so once we assess options, there's defined criteria and how they perform. So it's transparent in that sense that we're not pulling numbers out of thin air. There'll be, for example, numbers in a risk profile from a slip that we take from different road options. There may be, acquisition footprints, so there are defined footprints that we can compare. So that's what I mean by transparent. It's efficient, so I guess once we've identified criteria, it becomes a bit of a machine where we identify criteria and we know the impact of each option. It's quite efficient in that sense. So you basically build a framework or a platform. It's flexible. So when I say it's flexible, some things that we can clearly measure and define. So maybe an acquisition footprint, we can measure an area of a footprint, compare that to another one. Things like, what's a qualitative thing? It could be like biodiversity severance of corridors. That might not be a defined corridor, but we think this is where animals traverse. So we can sort of go, well, we think maybe new road option might have a bigger severance impact than on existing road. So some things that we can qualitatively assess between options and quantitatively assess. So risk is another one. So we're conscious that each option may have a different risks, whether that's an approval risk, a funding risk, there may be a revocation risk or heritage risk. So we can, include risks in terms of each of the options. And it's consistent. So I guess one of the benefits of MCA is over time, these things can become quite standardised. So, but in this case, on this project, it's quite a unique project. So yes, there is a standard framework, but we try and customise criteria to the objectives and I guess what's important for the community. So in terms of, and maybe that comes to the question about the colleagues. So who will undertake the MCA? So be members of the EOC, so the Reconstruction Authority, Transport New South Wales and Council, and they'll be supported by specialist consultants, like particularly those around, they can provide information around geotechnical risk. Obviously, that's a key issue for this project. And yeah, obviously an environmental, because I'm not an environmental specialist, so we'll bring in those specialists as required. So MCA tools, so there's obviously lots of guides out there. We've been asked to use the Transport for New South Wales MCA tool. So I'm conscious it's not available online, but I'm conscious that some people may want to look at MCA tools. So there is I've got lots of guides out there. So if you can't find anything online for the transport tool, there are similar tools available from Infrastructure Australia where you can look at and understand that process itself. So they're quite established things, and I'll probably coin the term industry best practice. So we're not inventing this process. It's a process that's accepted by Transport New South Wales, and now we've got a transport project, so it's appropriate for this sort of project, being a roads project. So as I alluded to, MCO, one of the first steps is to understand objectives. So there are some objectives that I think been there since the beginning. So I'll just run through them quickly, because that'll give you a bit of visibility to how we're going to compare options. So restore access to the Wolgan Valley, reduce safety risks for all road users. So I think we alluded to, some options have, wider formations, better sight lines through curves. Obviously geotechnical risk. So, risk of rockfall in terms of people using the road. Cost-effective solutions. So we're conscious that, being state and federally funded, we've got to ensure there's a value for money proposition. Minimise impacts on biodiversity, so that's obviously around clearing, minimise impacts on agricultural values, economic cost to the community. I'll touch on that. So obviously, we don't want ongoing closures or severance. So that's something we want to minimise. Visual impacts. So obviously some new roads would have, new cuttings, new fill embankments. So they might have some visual impacts in terms of the sites, not only from a road user, but from residents. Approval risks. So obviously some options may require, whether it's an environmental approval, a heritage approval. So those are things. So obviously if we can minimise those, it might be we can get things building sooner. The last one is around property impacts. So, where possible, we try and minimise impacts on public and private lands. So that's just a quick run through of objectives. Now, just one challenge we always have is it's often good to have lots of objectives and lots of criteria, but something we need to do ourselves to make sure it's robust is when we identify criteria and how we're going to measure things, there's a line of sight back to what we're trying to achieve in those objectives I showed earlier. So we also want to ensure things are measurable so we can compare things, whether it's quantitatively or qualitatively. We'll also want to ensure things are comparative. So, we want to identify criteria that, whether it's an acquisition impact or biodiversity impact, we can actually compare between options. And lastly, we don't want to have criteria where we're comparing the same things twice because it's sort of, it's a bit redundant. So they're just some key tests we ask ourselves before we put up criteria. Now, this is the probably the juicy bit for tonight. So I've just tried to show objectives, draft criteria measure. I've deliberately yellow highlighted draft criteria because that's what we're here to talk about today. So I'll run through these and hopefully they'll make sense. So if we had an objective for restoring access to the valley, so how could we measure that from a criteria? It could be when's the road open to unrestricted access. So in terms of how we might measure that in terms of, comparing options, it might be, some options may be open 6 months earlier than others. So that might be one way of how we compare things, and we can align it back to the objective of restoring access to the valley. Second one is around safety risks. So Andy talked about Austroads. So Austroads is, let's call it Australian government guidelines about road design and standards. So there is a measure called Safe System Assessment. So that's an established Austroads measure. So what does that mean? It basically means that if, for example, you've got a straighter road with fewer curves, wider lanes, wider shoulders, it is a safer road. As the road narrows in, there's an increased risk attached to it. So it may be that we can compare options based on the standard of the road. So narrower road, more curves, higher risk. Straighter road, fewer curves, wider lanes and shoulders, lower risk. So we think we can measure that. So geotechnical risks. So yes, we're conscious that there's obviously varying risk profiles with different options, but also not only an option as a whole, but there are different slip sites. So we want to get to a point where we can actually measure the risk score between options. So don't be alarmed. There's a measure called consequence and likelihood for loss of life. So that's just a way we measure things. And that just helps us compare. So often there are risk calculations around slopes. So we think, depending on how we treat our slopes, but also conscious there may be lots of slopes on each option, we want to get to a point where we compare that risk profile between different road alignments. So that's why I say at the bottom there, the challenge for us will be a weighted score, so a weighted risk score on each of the different road alignments to allow a like-for-like comparison. Cost-effective solutions. So we've said total project costs. So obviously I've put there 30 years in a deliberate manner. So obviously there's a capital cost to here and now, but also, you know, this road needs to be maintained. So what does maintenance look like? So there might be maintenance around, you know, the routine. So, you know, pothole patching, you know, drainage, culvert cleanouts and the like. But I've also put there remedial maintenance. So say, for instance, a scenario has a slip that may not be, the risk profile may not be reduced to the lowest possible. There may be still an ongoing risk of a slip failure. So it may be that occasionally or annually or every 5 years, there may be a minor or major slip that needs to be cleaned up. So we want to capture that. So we can roll those costs up and compare costs between options over a 30-year period to allow a like-for-like analysis again. So that's cost. And conscious I'm going to pause shortly because I'm going to run out of breath here. The next objective here is about biodiversity. So how could we measure that? We think we could basically take a footprint of an alignment or the option, understand, you know, the extent of clearing. So we could measure that. But also we could measure potentially the impact of a wildlife corridor. So we've got some probably levels of mapping where we understand there might be fauna movements through the valley and across alignment. So if we introduce a new corridor, a new severance, we could potentially measure that as against to maybe existing corridor which is already severed. So again, we think we could measure that and compare. Now, when it comes to impacts on cultural values, Aboriginal cultural values, we're conscious that we have a community of the Mingan people that we are going to talk to understand that the potential that measure or that criteria. So there'll be a separate conversation with the Mingan people to understand that. So that's one of those where it may not be a quantitative thing, but they'll explain the qualitative comparison between options. Economic cost to the community. So we've broken out in two measures. So the first one is, you know, often some projects we look at a bypass, you know, one bypass is quicker than the other one. So maybe, hey, for whatever reason, this option is 2 minutes faster than that option. So you could measure that one. But I think the next one's probably going to be more important. So that's ongoing disruption. So as I alluded to in the previous slide, where there may be an ongoing risk of a slope failure on a particular option, we may challenge our colleagues to try and go, okay, in terms of a probability of an event occurring, say a minor or a major slip, you know, could be closed for a certain number of days, but it has to be cleared again and open up. So we think we can measure that. So again, we'll try and ensure these things allow for a like-for-like comparison between options. Visual impacts, that's probably more about, you know, some options may have new cuttings, new fills, so we can probably measure that in a high level. Approval risks. So obviously some projects or options may require a heritage approval. It may require a revocation of national park. So that's often an act of parliament. So there's a process there. So there are some things there that some options may have high risk. And the second dot point there is around funding risk. So we know that there is a funding to allow a restoration of function, but some of the options will rely on a betterment funding. So that's a separate, let's call it bucket of money that some options may rely upon betterment. So that may be a separate pathway, and that funding for betterment is not yet secured. So there's a potential risk of betterment funding where there's still a submission that needs to be had, but it's not guaranteed. So that's why Andy alluded to there's different options on the existing alignment, ones where we're seeking to improve the alignment through betterment. So we may have to peel out the, let's call it the funds associated with that betterment to understand what the quantum is and, you know, seek that funding separately. So that's not guaranteed. So the last one there is about property impacts. So we think that, yes, we can measure, you know, option footprints, and then there'd be acquisition requirements on public and private land. So maybe, yes, some options may require so many properties to be acquired and so much area to be acquired. So that's a quick run through. And again, I'm trying to hopeful that the way I've structured around objectives, criteria, and how we're going to measure that, you know, it helps us, and hopefully sort of I can communicate that to you. But I've done lots of talking. I'm going to pause. I'm going to drink of water. I'm going to open the floor. Any questions online?
I've got one question here, Martin. I'm just going to unmute you in just a second. Martin's got his hand up. Just quickly as well, those online, please, if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand. We've got time in this session. So Martin, I'll hand that one over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Christoph, for going through that. I want to preface this by saying I'm a scientist, a statistician, and I've also done multi-criteria analyses in the past. But you're fairly new to this, and what I'd like to point out is it's coming up for 4 years now since we've had this this situation that we need to all deal with, and it sounds to me like in your draft criteria there, you're talking about doing a whole bunch more consulting work to actually get there. And if you knew the the history of the project, you would be aware that WSP provided a very, very poor risk assessment way back when, which then led to council actually closing the road. It wasn't until GHC came on and gave it a bit more sanity that we actually got a proper risk assessment in there. And that's after 3 years, or close to 3.5 years. Now, if you're going to do this multi-criteria analysis properly with a risk assessment for each of your options, we're going to be looking at another 3.5 years for doing risk assessments and all the other necessary work, including the geotechnical work that I raised earlier. When are we ever going to get to a decision making to actually get this? When we have the information there that the existing road can be fixed, all the other roads options are very much pie in the sky, open air. No Aboriginal cultural heritage work done, no environmental work done, biodiversity work done. All of these imponderables, which are in your draft criteria, how are you going to end up not comparing apples with watermelons or walnuts or things like that?
Thanks, Martin. Christoph?
So I could probably talk some things, but I guess there's a question about the broader program. So I know, you're completely correct. I've only been engaged on this project for the last few months, but we've been asked to not only implement any work that's developing options along the existing alignment, but helping the project team assess those options, including the previous options that previously developed. So yes, I'm conscious that I've only been involved for the last few months, but I've been involved with MCOs in the past, so I've made that point. But yes, I agree that some things have developed more detail than others. So it is a challenge for us to try and allow an apples for apples comparison. I know from our perspective, we've been pushed to try and run through the MCA fairly quickly and come up with a preferred option report, or an MCA report with a preferred option quite quickly. I won't dwell on when that's going to be, but I know there's pressure put on us to try and resolve this as soon as possible. And the intent is we're going to provide a report or a summary of that report once that's done, once it's endorsed by the EOC. The broader question about program, I'll defer to you, Chris, in terms of
So
it's not going to be 3 years, it's going to be a lot.
No, we're talking weeks and months.
Before we go to that, in this case, if it's not going to be done properly, then what we're going to have is a subjective measure for each of your criteria going on the way. Because for some of them, you're going to have good information, good scientific background, geotechnical work. For others, you're going to have nothing. And so in that case, it's going to be terribly subjective in terms of what you come out with.
Oh, God. That's a tough one. I mean, it's a probably double-edged sword. One of them is, yes, it would take longer to make sure all things develop to a point, but I think we are getting to the point where we're comfortable enough with our stretched options to allow comparison against options that previously developed. I mean, I think there's a broader consensus that we need to resolve this ASAP, and that's certainly the focus that we're bringing to this project.
I'll give you an idea of how difficult it, and it sort of picks up on something that Martin is saying. There's a registered native title claim over the whole area. Native title comes under, for example, both property impacts and cultural impacts, and there are separate criteria or considerations in terms of cost attached to both. Impact on culture and heritage, impact on the land values. How would you stick that?
Yeah, so probably two things. So one of them is around risk, but also the other one is, I'll probably go back one slide. So program. So where there's a risk of a native title or a heritage approval or a revocation, we know that may, I don't know, let's say hypothetically 3, 6 months, a year and so forth. So we can actually start putting these things in a high level program around
3, 6 months.
I'm just saying hypothetically, say there are risks and we know that a risks might be 3 months delay or 6 months delay.
We're not talking delay, we're talking costs principally and.
Yeah, but there's two things with risk. There's a cost, there's also a program. So we can pick it up in a program in terms of if a particular risk is triggered, it may delay works. It may also add cost. So we can pick things up, and I guess I'll go back to the point, we don't want to double count things. But yeah, if there's a risk that can push a program out or can add to a cost, we can tease it out.
I mean,
Well, that's
this, I guess on the approval side, one of the fundamental issues here is new national park legislation to get it done. I mean, that's obviously a major risk issue.
yes.
Are there showstoppers? Are there things that you've been told, unless A, then B can't happen?
So as I sort of alluded to before, we've got geotechnical specialists, but we've also got environment and heritage specialists that will try and provide clarity on what those risks equate to in terms of a program, or could this pass or it may not pass, whether it's a showstopper or not.
So whether you're talking, for example, to environment, national parks about what their fundamental criteria are, and
I think we've got enough. We've got obviously environment heritage consultants on site, so I think they understand some of those risks clearly and understand the legislation behind those risks to communicate that back to an MCA process.
but your environmental consultants won't be able to give you a comment on what the political process is likely to look like.
Yes, they can. They're very wise on environmental heritage process in terms of acts of parliament and other things that are required. So we're leaning on them to provide us that expert knowledge.
As to what Parliament will do.
Yeah, but something like a revocation, Transport does revocation for lots of projects. So, there's a degree of understanding of what that looks like and that duration of program. So I'd say some of those things are known. So
Just want
any
to,
more? Oh,
I've got nothing more online, but sorry, sir.
Just regarding the funding, you spoke that we've got like for like funding, but betterment funding was yet to be secured. So that's probably, I'm guessing, in regards to now that we're revisiting the Wolgan Gap area. Because previous to the revisiting of the Wolgan Gap area, we're talking about a funding envelope of 385 million approved to restore access to the Wolgan Valley. So does that mean that we're now back at the funding drawing board because we've realigned what route we want to take?
I can add some words to it, but there's some options, new road, guaranteed. Others where there's, yeah, so there is a funding envelope, yeah, but there's some options where we're looking at, let's just go, one of the options looks at, can we leverage existing road? And the first cab off the rank is we restore back to pre-disaster function and standard. And then there are options of that, try and raise it a higher standard. Once we get to, there's definitions around betterment. And that's what I alluded to, where we might go, okay, this is, let's call it the pre-disaster function standard, but hey, we should try and improve that, whether it's a curve or the slope, the risk associated with some of the slopes. Some of that will get teased into betterment, where we've got to make the case to DRPA.
So then we're back into do we meet Oz roads, or do we just go back to what we had before, and whether or not that's allowable under the funding?
Yeah, so look, and I guess that's why we do in this MCA is we want to move away from, and I think I'll probably speak for the EOC, purely a cost thing. I mean, what we're trying to demonstrate is through a process, we're trying to capture the benefits of these other options, whether it's a safety benefit, whether it's a, if we, for example, if we treat some of the slopes and reduce the risk even more so, can we demonstrate what the resilience benefit is in terms of probability of reduced slope failures? And can we say, communicate that if we do this betterment, we might get so many weeks of reduced closure as a result of it. So I guess, yes, there's a funding question, but I think it's also the challenge of the project team to articulate the benefits of those options. So I think that's a challenge for us, is how we articulate it, try and make that argument, whether that's the option that comes up, a stronger argument towards betterment.
I'm just confused between funding envelope and we have to still get approving for this kind of betterment.
I'll let Chris sort of answer that.
But we have funding based on the application, which is a new alignment.
General. Okay. Yeah.
That is what the approval spot.
on your line.
So if we go to the existing Wolgan Road, we need to revisit the funding. So
That is supposed to-
I've got one more, just one more question.
Yep, that's fine.
One more.
So we've been told,
Is that all right? Just to do with maybe the resilience part. So with the criteria, how would you articulate how resilience is incorporated into it? I
Okay.
understand the safety, the geotech and the
Yep.
community cost part, but the basically comparing options, the standard of the solution itself, so the level of design, build and quality.
Yep.
Is that somehow in there? I can't-
Yeah, so I'll probably answer it 2-1. So there's obviously this one's around risk, so around risk of slope failures and so forth. So we're conscious it's not just one slope, there are many. So what we want to do is get to a point where comparing, so there's A number of slopes, B and so forth. What we want to do is start comparing the risk of that whole road option of failures. Now that has two things. Obviously, there's a failure and a risk for people commute on the corridor. So that's the score itself that we can compare between options. But there's a second, and that's probably more around the community severance, where we want to pick it up under economic costs to the community. So there's obviously a risk, if someone's driving the road, there's a slip, but also if there's a slip, there's a disruption. So what we want to do is understand, let's call it the probability of a failure occurring with each of the options, and conscious that it's not just one location, but multiple. But with some options, there may be higher probability of a slip failure, where it may need a cleanup and a reconstruction effort as well. So what we want to do is, and again, this comes back to, I'm sorry, I'm jumping between slides, but I'm trying to answer this. Oh, hang on, go back. This cost question. So say one option has a higher a risk of ongoing maintenance requirements in terms of slope failures. We want to try and pick up that cost as well. So there's a cost not only to let's call it the taxpayer, there's a cost to the community in terms of ongoing severance, and there's a risk of a failure. So what we want to do is try and capture it a few different ways. So again, when we compare options for options, we're trying to understand the full, let's call it the full range of issues associated with each of those options. I'm hoping I've answered that one.
There's some options that are completely, modern.
Yes, you can say that. Get to current extent. Yep.
For want of a better term.
Yep.
So I'm just wondering how that part, how the resilience of the design and the build and the fix.
The resilience of the build will get picked up. Well, there's two. There's the risk score itself. So if I just bounce back, there's standard measures, and that sounds quite alarmist, but consequence and likely for loss of life. So that's the measure for geotechnical risk. So what we want to do is compare, let's call it a risk score of a failure, but we're conscious that it's not just the risk of a slope coming down. There's a consequence that there may be ongoing closures that we want to pick up. So we want to compare that, but also we want to understand the total cost at the end of the day. So we're trying to bring all this information together. So by comparing everything, all these options against various criteria, as a project team, we have the best information available to us to make a recommendation for the preferred option.
does the donkey steps figure in some of these assessments as having it as a sort of a backup road in the event that it's not option 2?
Well, the donkey steps is being considered as an option itself.
I know, but sorry, aside from that, having it as a
Oh,
because it
yeah.
factors in. So if you've got the means of getting it
Yeah.
into an app,
Yes.
Donkey steps does not ideal, but it gives you a way, like you're doing now, it gives you a way of access if you do have to clean up. Yeah, well, there will be more room to be able to access the council as well. So hopefully the need, but you need to block close the road.
Yeah.
To maybe clean a slip is lessened, but there is still a backup of donkey
Yeah.
steps, assuming it's not absolutely closed, which I don't know. It's outside of what we.
and the reconstruction authorities said that we need to do another independent technical review. Now, the last one took about a year to do, and the Commonwealth still hasn't looked at it.
There is, as part of the
So-
funding requirements, which Chris mentioned. So say we, only hypothetically, because no decision's been made, option 2 is the one that gets up. Then that would need a DIFA application to go in, which would be It's pretty straightforward. They're the ones that go in all the time. It's nowhere near as complicated as building a new road probably was. But as part of that process, there is a requirement for independent technical review. Yeah. But it is a much more simplistic design. It should be a lot. People have been all over it for a long time. They should be able to get through a lot quicker than so.
I do apologise. I know we've got more questions. I'm just conscious of time. There will be.
This is important. We've waited 4 years to get to this point.
I understand this. There will be another opportunity for questions just after Christoph's gone on to the next section. We've still got time for questions. There'll still be more time for questions.
So any more questions online?
There's no more questions online for now.
Okay, let's keep going.
Well, before you just sorry to interrupt, but it comes again, Martin's comment. If we've got to do another independent technical review, why isn't that feeding into the multi-criteria assessment?
So when you say, like, I'm not.
It's a feed into the program side of things.
So if we're doing all of these reviews, why doesn't it go into the choice of the options is essentially the question. Because the independent technical review is meant to be checking and acting as a sort of an independent review of all of the work that's being done. Doesn't it make sense to put that into this process here if somebody's going to choose an option?
The independent, well, that would delay things further if you put in, because there isn't independent technical
by another year probably.
Yet.
Yeah.
But the outcomes of those, as I said earlier, we've been working with DOFA guidelines now for 5 years, 4 years. We pretty much know what's in them, what you can put in, what you can't put in. And we know what designs will go through RA with minimal changes here and there. Nothing that's going to actually be, they're not suddenly going to say that 100-metre slip, the particularly bad slip in the middle. Oh, no, you don't need to do that. That's no problem. They're not going to do that. There might be little bits skirting around the edge. There's nothing that's actually going to make a fundamental change to what you would select, because an ITR is a little bit down the line, because there's still a detailed design phase to come through for assuming 2 or 2A was to get up. There's still a detailed design phase to go through that, and then that goes to ITR. So you can't wait all the way down the line.
I think that would get picked up in the time to open. Yeah,
time to open the program. Yeah. It will get.
There are the ones that require an ITR and the ones where that's already been done. Then that would get picked up in that the time frame.
The previous ITR did look at fixing the old road, as I understand it, as part of the overall assessment, where they dropped the price down from $1 billion plus to 500 million.
All right, I might kick on. Okay. So just look, obviously some people are very confident. Appreciative of our process, but I've just put this as an example, or just to show people what this could look like. So this is a hypothetical. So I've got 4 options up here, A, B, C, D. I've got 2 criteria, and they're not dissimilar criteria to what we've used. So I've said hypothetically, say option A had an impact of 10 hectares in terms of acquisition, B 8, C 6, D 4. There's a biodiversity impact criteria to measure, and again, each of them have a degree of clearing. This table 2 is a bit of a, I'll call it traffic light reporting. So green is good in terms of the best score, red is bad. So this is just purely as a hypothetical to sort of show how we apply this. And again, this is a quantitative tool. It's quite efficient and it's quite transparent. So we're not going to invent numbers in terms of acquisition impacts or other things. We can actually point to an impact of a criteria, pull out the measure and allow comparison. So in this example here, I've said, okay, option D is the best from a property impacts point of view because there's less acquisition requirement. In terms of biodiversity impacts, option C, 6 has the least impacts and it's a green, so it's the best performing option. So that's just to give a sense of how would this work in practice. In our case, we'll have 1, 2, 2A, 1D, and 4 the cross. But again, those criteria we showed before, we're going to start measuring them up and start assessing how they perform. To lay out a like-for-like comparison, conscious that yes, there's probably some more detail on some options, but we want to get to a point where we can compare options to options. So that's what it looks like in practice. So we're going to come to the feedback. So, and I guess this is what today's about. We've presented criteria as draft. The intent is we want to ask, have we missed something? We want to ask questions about, are the measures appropriate in terms of comparing options? And there'll be a link that gets sent out, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yep.
tomorrow?
Yes.
So anyone that's registered will get that link sent automatically?
Yeah, we've got your details.
Yeah.
We will send that link out.
And I'll show you what it'll look like. So this is just, I've picked the first criteria, and this is the one about road opening. So we've said, and this is just a snippet of all the criteria that come through. So there's two questions we're asking. Is, do we think that criteria is important for assessing options? In this case, it's about a road access and when it's going to be open. And I guess the second question is, do we think that's an appropriate measure? So we've said, look, if we can compare the month and year of opening of each of these options, is that the appropriate measure for it? So, and I guess the last question there is any other comments on each of the criteria. So the survey will come through. I think it's going to ask, are you a resident, a business, and so forth. But really, we want to drill into, questions about, are these criteria relevant? Can we measure them? Are they appropriate? So I'll just pause it there.
I've got one online question.
Yep, okay.
Martin, Martin, please go ahead with your question.
Yeah, thanks. I seem to have a lot of questions here. One example for your biodiversity there, you've just got area of clearing, which is one of the factors. But I mean, if you're clearing an endangered ecological community or an area which has a known threatened species, then it'd be different. So
yes.
Your criteria there is quite shallow in that context. But I'd go back to the original thing where you're trying to explain risk, which is likelihood and consequence of rock falls and slope slips and what have you. To do that properly, you need something like GHD did recently with the revised risk assessment for the old Wolgan Road. But in this multi-criteria example, you're bringing in options which haven't done that rigorous risk assessment on slope failure or rock rockfall in that case. You're not going to be able to do it for this this process or this multi-criteria process unless we wait for another 2 or 3 years. I think the message that I'd like to go through to Ross and everybody sitting there is that we're coming up for 4 years now. We need a decision. This multi-criteria analysis seems to me like a little bit of a waste of time in the context that to be able to implement it effectively, you've got to have far better scientific basis for all your options that you're going to include it. Otherwise, you will not get apples with apples. You'll be getting subjective opinion on top of subjective opinion.
So I suppose to answer the biodiversity question, yeah, you're spot on about the area clearing. We're going to, I suppose, check to see if, for example, we've got mapping available for high valley vegetation, which will pick up questions of, say, presence of threatened species and ecological communities. So where available, we'll drill into available data. But yes, there is a question of like for like, but I think there's definitely a message that we want to resolve this as soon as possible. We want to try and use whatever information is available at our fingertips to run through that process. But Chris, you want to answer that?
We've carried out biodiversity investigations.
Yeah.
Let's concentrate on the risk, because I think that's the most important one for all of us. At the moment, we're using a road which is demonstrably unsafe, or certainly has a higher risk of loss of life, and we've been consigned to that for the last 3.5 years. And it looks to me like if we go through this process, we're going to be looking at another 3 years worth of consultants' reports into this. When GHD did a very good one for the existing Wolgan Road, but we don't have anything like that, anything near like that for any of the other road options. So I'm just wondering where we're going with this.
I think on the geotech for the other road options, Martin, that yes, it's not been done, but a lot of the work there is a cut slope, which in itself is quite stable because it's in some rock. But no matter what you geotech throughout, if that was a chosen option, and then they've still got to go ahead and do geotech to finalise that design, So whatever comes out of that, there will be a geotechnical design which makes those rock slopes stable. So whether you've done geotech investigation now or not, the ultimate answer to come out of that will be a stable rock face. So it will be assessed on that basis. It will have a stable rock face from the time that it's actually built.
But at what cost if you don't know the underlying geology? You don't know the slips on that and those new ones and what have you. It is so speculative at this point in time. The only real information we have is for the existing road, plus maybe some sections on the donkey steps. All the other ones are just like open books where there's nothing on the page.
I'll probably put a question to you, Chris. I mean, often the estimates still reflect a degree of risk and contingency. Yeah, so where, let's say there's a heightened, say there's not a level of information available, that's often built into a level of contingency in the cost for each of the options. So there are ways that we try and pick these things up where the information is not perfect or available.
So that geotechnical cost that I was saying just now, where if that's the chosen option and you've got to do geotech for those spaces, then there is a risk that you have to do that. So that is allowed already within the cost. That will be allowed in by the cost estimator. It's their part of their profession. That's what they're allowed for.
No, I'm afraid that's really subjective because I mean the point to look at here is the geology is all the same. Whether you go over on the eastern side or western side as the current road goes, you still got to traverse the same sort of geology and scree slope and what have you in there. But we haven't done that nobody's done that for the other options. The only option where we can possibly do that with sound scientific basis at the moment is the old Wolgan Road. But to get to the level we can do it for your other options is going to require another 2 or 3 years worth of work.
How do the criteria that you've identified here compare with what's being used on the Great Western Highway on Victoria Pass?
Yeah, so look, I guess probably two things. I guess I'll probably go back. Yeah. So they're our objectives, right? I don't know what the objectives are for that project. And I guess the other point I'd make is, the drivers for that is different for the drivers for this. So I guess the criteria we develop are aligned to the objectives for this project. So I don't have visibility of what they're trying to achieve in terms of objectives and criteria.
Christoph, you mentioned earlier that this project has unique elements to it.
Yep.
What are they?
I'll give you a completely different example. So I've worked on a few Pacific Highway bypass projects, and option goes across the floodplain, options up the floodplain. If you bridge the floodplain or across the floodplain, you're going to cause potentially a flooding impact. So different contexts. So I guess that's why we led by objectives here. So I guess yes, there's a closure on the pass, but there is an alternate route. It's problematic, but there is an alternate route. So these are different from.
Most of them look pretty similar.
Oh, I don't have visibility.
Yeah, it is earlier days for that project as well.
I know they don't have the DFA to deal with up on the pass, but they've gone from the process of closure to 8 weeks real-time feeding of information about the geotechnical stability of the area into panels of consultants with shortlisted sort of outcome reached in an 8-week period. And then I'm not sure it's only I think they've given them something like a couple of months to come up with their solutions, costings from that. So that's a road that's carrying massive impacts to the whole.
I don't think it's fair for us to comment on that project because we're not involved. So I think it'd be inappropriate for us to sort of talk about what's going through.
Well, I guess where the question's going, I guess, is how can we compress timeframes as tightly as possible.
Yep.
And still have something, take account of all of Martin's comments, which I agree with.
Yeah.
That's actually useful.
So I'll probably, one thing I would say is, I know we're on a deadline to try and assist the team come up with a correct option. Chris, do we want to give a sense of, how many months we're talking about to try and resolve this?
Yeah, we would try to get to a preferred alignment by August. So that's the challenge we'll put to the team, and that's been
So I'll probably go, here we go.
endorsed by EOC.
So yeah, to probably go to your, where we are now. So we've heard August. So that's just the steps we're working through. So we're conscious we present a draft criteria. We want feedback by the 12th. And again, this is, we're being pushed for time by the project team. Now, we're seeking feedback on the draft criteria. So this is an asterisk there. So when we get feedback, what we try and do is go, is there alignment back to the objective? Can we measure it? So that's what I've said by key tests. Once we've got that feedback, we want to take the criteria, and if they're revised, take it back to the EOC for ultimate endorsement. So the EOC being Transport, DFA and Council. So once that's set, we run a workshop and we, with information available to us, we start comparing options against those criteria. We will then present that workshop report to the EOC for endorsement. And the intent is, and I think it's fair to say, we want to come back and present the outcome of that as an exec sum. So there's transparency in terms of, this is the answer we came to, and this is how we came to that answer.
The oversight committee admittedly doesn't have expertise on it itself, so it's going to be very heavily dependent on information that's fed to us.
Yeah, the idea is yes, that committee will be there, but they will have the skilled consultants available. Oh, what did you mean by this? Pull it in, give us your idea. So the input be from those consultants within the room or online. But actually, the idea is that we're in the room with them and able to actually be first hand.
And the intent is also the EOC is briefed on the criteria. So there is a degree of visibility that's already seen on the draft criteria, and there'll be a degree of visibility once the draft criteria are presented as final or endorsed by the EOC. So yes, it may not be in the weeds, but there's definitely oversight and visibility.
And presumably there'll be commercially sensitive information amongst it potentially. I mean, it's obviously well pre-tender, but there'll be estimated costings for different components of the decision. But leaving aside the actual numbers, is there any opportunity for the community to comment on the material that's going forward as part of the assessment?
That's it.
That's what we're.
Well, that's setting the criteria.
Yeah.
But that's not the material that's being assessed.
As in the information that's being assessed.
Yeah. So you're going to give a score, presumably, on each of these criteria.
I'll probably go back. So,
and the score is going to be based on information. And in terms of transparency, is there an opportunity for the community to see the information and to make a comment on it?
That's slide 2 back with your lovely colours.
so
Do we get to comment on it? Do we get to see that and make a comment about it?
Well, two things: the information underlying it. So what have you relied on in
Comment to that.
yeah, and then the score that's been allocated to it.
That would be part of your normal report.
So the MCA will draw upon. So if you can imagine, say property impacts. I mean, there's a footprint identified. So say each option is a footprint. So it's a defined footprint. So I don't know if we necessarily go back and say we're going to go. Is this footprint wrong or right? It's a footprint to compare acquisition impacts. We've got geotechnical people that we're going to lean on to basically help us come up with geotechnical risk scores. So I think it's probably more. I'll probably put it in. This is what the feedback's about. It's really have we got the criteria correct? Yes, there's going to be questions of
Christoph, the problem we've got in the community is a very deep lack of trust in the process to this point, because we've had wildly differing reports prepared by leading experts, and you know, for what it's worth, we think GHD's done a terrific job. But we've also got, you know, capable experts in WSP that have said something entirely different. And at the end of it, you're putting numbers on these things and saying, well, here's your solution. This one might take 2 years. This one might take 10 years. People would like to see, I think, how you get to that point, and a little scorecard at the end isn't going to satisfy anyone.
Look, I'll probably answer what I can, but I'll probably throw to Chris as well. So I guess the intent is the MCA report will draw on information that's readily available, given, you know, we're trying to resolve this as quickly as possible. So they will be bringing geotechnical reports, or we're bringing, you know, biodiversity information, mapping information.
That'll be in the report.
And that'll be in the report. So if you can imagine there's let's call it an MCA report.
Will that be in the report?
And there'll be attachments to it, like specialist reports under it, which goes, okay, the MCA report says you're going to pull from this report those numbers, and probably be attached to that report. So I know we want to, I'll probably go back to this thing.
So it'll be that last step on it.
Yeah, so we want to, there's going to be a report. So that's you know, how we've scored it and why we've scored it, and this is the measures from it. So I suspect there'll be specialist studies that'll be attached to it. So it'll give you a sense of where the information is coming from to allow like-for-like analysis. And the intent is we're going to provide an exec summary of that report. Now, Chris, in terms of level of visibility of not only the MCA report, but specialist study that's supported, I'm assuming they'll be made available at some point.
There's full transparency,
Yeah.
release, the backing and all the detail behind it. Just the commercial aspects of it will be something that we not share around P90 costing and so forth, because that ultimately is used as part of our pre-tender estimate and application. But if there's no issue with the ERC, we'll be releasing everything. So,
and will there be an opportunity for the community to make comment on the report ahead of it going to the EOC?
I can't.
I don't believe that's in the program at the moment, and that's something that But again, if that's something that you want to provide that feedback, then we can take it up to the EOC. And
I think putting it the other way, the EOC probably needs to see before it goes to the public. We're doing it with all the best skills and abilities we can, but we're doing it for our client, which is the EOC. We've got to see it first before it goes forward.
I've just got a quick question for everyone. Is there anything that Christoph's gone through tonight that you just wanted any clarification on, any of the information that's been up there that you just got any questions about what Christoph has presented? Please, pop your hand up. More than happy to assist. Yes.
Just a quick one to make sure that we're all on the same definition of open, that opens no gates, no electric gate.
Correct. So,
access.
yeah, so if I go back to this,
This is varying definitions.
so to me, opening is unrestricted access, all vehicles. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
On your slide, which I suppose we'll get soon, but on the little sheet here, it just says for the safety one, for example, safe system assessment.
Yep.
So you seem to have more dot points under that.
Oh, so
Things that would be sort of part of that.
yes. So,
So just when I'm trying to work out the resilience part in my own mind, when I
okay, so resilience is different from safe system. Okay, so safe system is can you imagine we've just opened up 4 lanes of Great Western Highway. 2 lanes either direction, wide shoulders, wide lanes, central meeting barriers. So that's let's call it a 5-star road. And you look at let's call it sections of those along a road that really snake and climb up through Mount Tomah. So lesser standard of road. So what we can do is we've taken all those elements of the road in terms of the lanes, the shoulder widths, the geometry, barriers and so forth. And we basically add that all up to get a risk score or a safe system score. So that's how that's what safe systems about.
your measures are just a bit more detailed than what we pre-reading.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's just you can look it online. There's a whole like a spreadsheet that guys do to basically fill in to derive a risk score to get an overall score for a road.
And similarly, the geotech, I
Yep.
have the risk score on here, it didn't have the other bits and pieces. So the ones on the right, the measures.
Yep. Oh, so yeah. So that's often the guys will do. I should say the team will do a score on a slope face.
Slope risk assessment.
Yeah. So at a slope level, but there may be, I'd say, 20 slopes over a road, and one might have 15 over here. So what we want to do, and that's what I've said, a weighted score. So to allow like-for-like analysis, we do a weighted score for each option to allow comparison. That's what's there. So think of that as like an averaging process to allow comparison between options.
I've got Martin online. For those online, please don't feel scared to put your hand up. We are here to answer any questions. Martin, over to you.
Yeah, thanks again. Another question. In your geotechnical risk score, you've got a weighted score over option length. What does that mean?
As I said before, what we want to try and do is, conscious that some options may have more slopes than others, and the level of treatment each slope may vary, and there are different road lengths and number of slopes. What we want to try and do is come up with a weighted score to compare options.
Okay, so are we talking the length of the hazard, or are we talking the length of the road, or are we talking the length of time it takes to actually build the road?
The length of hazard and the length of road.
Okay, so at the moment, the consequence and likelihood of risk of loss of life for the existing Wolgan Road is about 10 times lower than coming down the donkey steps, right? So you can possibly make that comparison in that instance. But with the new road option, one of those squiggly lines you had before, we don't have a proper geotechnical risk score to actually do that. How are you going to come up with your table like you had for the biodiversity and
so I'll have a go at answering that, but I'll flip Danny too. So I think the idea is, if it's a new road, we design to a standard to a risk score. So that's I think that's technical, but I'll let you.
Yeah, with the new road, like I said before, there'll be, irrespective of whatever the conditions are, there will be a physical geotechnical design they can do to make that as close to 100% safe as they can. Whereas with some of the other options, too, obviously, is going to be more limited in its works on the slopes, and you're still going to get slopes, say, above that, which are pretty much sitting as they're existing. Whereas for well that the option 1D, the slopes go all the way to the top, and there's nothing else that's going down on top of it except what is being man built. So it's gonna be a lot more structurally sound, even though we haven't got all the nitty gritty of the geotech. They will have by the time they design it, and therefore they'll get a stable design. So option 2 has still got some instabilities with it outside of what we're actually designing, outside of the parts that are going to be built in the new works. So there is a criteria there.
Sorry, isn't this just a stealthy way to bring back in a brand new road option?
No, I would say definitely not, Martin. No. Not.
Well,
we're working on. From GHD's point of view, we're working on 2 and 2A and option 1, which is the equivalent for new road on the same route. We're working on those with the knowledge, with the hope that they're the ones that get up. Really, we're not really working on it for no reason at all. We're working on it with the chance that these are viable options. These are really can happen, and they can make good benefits towards the project. As in, maybe in time, it'll show out in the MCA. Do they have a time benefit? Do they have a cost benefit? And all those issues, which we believe from GHD, they probably do. But we can't preempt a lot of that. That's the whole idea, as you know, of the MCA process.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, what I'm concerned about is the length of time that it's taken to even get here. It's like we had this report, then we went back to square one. I'm afraid that we're going to go back to square one again and have another 3 years wait when there appears to be a well-presented option. In this case, the multi-criteria just sort of throws a door wide open for a longer time frame to get the necessary data into it to compare apples with apples.
I think as Chris alluded to, we want to get to an answer by end of August. So that's what we're working towards.
And if we go to the ITR process, we need to have material that will support us getting the funding for the restoration option. So
fair enough. But the point being is, if this report's going to be done by August, you're not going to have a proper geotechnical risk of loss of life being able to be done for any option other than probably the existing Wolgan Road.
I think we just get into a circular discussion because we either do it quickly and efficiently, and yes, it's not going to be perfect, but it gets us to preferred by August, or we delay the program, which we don't want to do. We're trying to find that middle ground, which isn't trying to preempt the outcome, but it is also trying to do this as quickly as possible.
So just a couple of things. The DRFA issue of betterment. So the way the rules are structured, obviously, you can build to current standards without going to a betterment claim. With 2A and 2 and 1, these options you've been looking at, what component constitutes the betterment there?
One's probably a little bit that let's talk about. But the difference, option 2 will be DRFA and compliant. So that's no question. Option 2A, really, we're putting forward, most of the stuff we're putting forward is additional works around the bends. So there'll be some additional work at the top end of the job. It'll be wider at the top where you come through the gap. Then,
so just stopping there, most of that would also meet current road standards, though, wouldn't it?
yeah, it's that question about current standards is not quite as cut and dried as it sounds. It's DFA, I'm paraphrasing, says something like to current standards, not including road cross section and road widths, something along those words. So we can't suddenly go from a 5 metre road, which we call it nominally 5. It's not. I know it goes from 4.5 to about 6 or 6.5 in places, but nominally 5 metre road to a 5 metre lane to 2.5 metre to a 7 or 8 metre lane. We can't just do that. But it does allow us to build pavements to a standard that is also to get the drainage to the standard, things like that. So we propose that that's within the design, is to look at the drainage side of things, which has a big impact on failures, obviously on downslope failures particularly. So we're looking at drainage in all the options anyway. So the real difference between 2 and 2A, that was your first question about betterment, is that additional distance we can push it. So if we've got a 5 metre lane with a 1 metre verge on the inside and that drain, we're looking at actually maybe making that a 3 metre put into the bank. So you get better sight distance through the corner, you get an extra wide piece of pavement on that lane, you can probably get 2 large vehicles past each other around the corner. You know, if one's coming all the way, you don't go, whoa, gee, what was that? You know, I have to dodge around it. And we're making, part of the application for that will be on safety grids. Well, that is the best basis to make any application to make it stand up is on safety. So that's the push that we're going to make with option 2A.
And that
Effectively, it's a few other bits, but that's
second part of the question is, might be for you, Chris.
Sure.
My understanding is the Commonwealth hasn't signed off as yet that $385 million package. It was a state.
I don't believe that's correct, but my understanding would be saying that it's funded.
it is signed.
Well, the part of the problem is that when this went through originally, you only get to new road options if it's deemed that the existing infrastructure can't be repaired.
Well, then you only do have and your option becomes a new road. We can't do that.
Yeah. So previously, working off the advice that was given, which has now been reviewed and found wanting, we're back with a situation where if it's possible to fix the existing infrastructure, presumably you don't get to looking at the option of a new road. Is that factored into multi-criteria in terms of the RFA, other than perhaps as a betterment option?
So what's the exact question? terms of
Is it-
so when
I appreciate the question. Can we maybe chat about it after? Just maybe go into more detail after.
And I can answer it quickly.
Yeah.
I'd like to-
Okay.
Can I just say, so what we're doing is re-prosecuting the application. So as you said, the restorations come into the mix in terms of assessing it. And then this process is to see if now if we were to reintroduce the restoration with the information against the approved option, which are new alignment options, does the preferred alignment come out any different? And if it does, then we have to amend in a way the application. Hopefully it's a fast track process, but that's essentially what's this exercise is about, is that the application at the time showed that the existing alignment was not the preferred. And so, but now, and that was what has been approved and funded right now. So we're changing the nature, the scope of the approved funding envelope. So that needs to go through and get endorsed by.
My understanding was that it was never said that you couldn't fix the old road. It was just that it was cost prohibitive, that the $1 billion plus figure had.
Yeah. And so it wasn't preferred. So that was the application. So it's a change to the scope of the funding approval.
And now what we're looking at is a situation, as I understand it, where the view is that no, the slopes don't present the risks that was presented initially. The cost to fix, or the option 1, 2 or 2A are not likely to cost $1 billion plus to do.
But we haven't quite costed all that, right? That's the exercise we're doing right now.
Okay. But I'm assuming that we're doing it because we don't think it's going to cost over $1 billion.
I hope so, but we haven't seen the costs. So.
And if that thing comes into play, I guess what I'm saying is that it rules out, doesn't it, the option of
well, it goes into the MCA process. The cost is one of many criteria.
I mean on the DRA approval issue.
Well, if it comes through as preferred, then the application needs to address the change.
Yeah, and what Christoph said before, that yes, there's 2 will be pretty much funded under DFA. Well, I mean, little bits here and there maybe, but pretty much funded under DFA. 2A, we've got to make a case for it. We have to make a case for it to come out of betterment. Betterment funding is a different bucket completely. You have to make a really good case for it. It is possibly, that putting words in RA's mouth, I don't see a bigger bucket maybe, but we've got to see how much we can get out of that bucket too.
probably add to that. I mean, well, we're obviously going to understand the option 2 cost and the incremental cost of the betterment solution. And I guess what we're trying to do is use the MCA to go, are there sufficient benefits of betterment option that we should prosecute the case for it?
And safety is a major one.
Is that the option 1? Is that DRFA compliant as it is?
Option 1?
Yeah.
No, option 1 is more in line with option 1, the one on the other side of the valley. It's a full width road. It changes, not only changes, it generally keeps the same horizontal alignment and then it follows the bends, but the bends are slackened out quite a lot. You've got widening on lanes to get heavy vehicles past each other. You've got all the way through the full length of it, but it also changes vertical geometry as well. So many areas of cut and fill made in that. So it is
a significant betterment element in one.
Significant again. It goes another level again. Yeah, I mean it's not in the middle of a brand new green road. I mean it's still a sort of a brownfield, I suppose you'd call it. Road. It was still being built up on top of what is there, so it doesn't have. Maybe it doesn't have the same environmental effects and so on, but it's still a brand new smacky road. Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah.
With option 2A you keep talking about, will that be taken into consideration the valley expanding in the future? With growth, industry development? Because that's going to be an issue in the future with valley expansion.
Yeah, so look,
Well, it's not part of our remit, but
but look, if I could probably answer in a general sense. So obviously, my background is traffic transport. What we often get asked is, let's call it, provide a a target for the road to accommodate a certain volume of traffic over time. So often we get asked to go what's, you know, we've got to make sure the road can cater for traffic 20 years from now. So if there's, let's call it, there's a shift in volumes in terms of light and heavy vehicle traffic, that we would, you know, ask of that from council, so we can consider it in the design. So that's just one of, you know, we always take traffic and transport in consideration. And if, for example, I don't know, I'm not sure what the mix of heavy vehicle traffic is, but say there was a big shift in semi vehicles or B doubles or whatever, you know, we'd have to take that into account. But I'd probably be leaning on getting some information from council about what that future vision is, to make sure whatever design we come up with can accommodate the volume of traffic, not only the volume, but the mix of traffic.
So I think that's something to consider, because at the moment we've got a resort down there where the school was planning to build and had a fair establishment. Well, that's just two examples. So that old road, if it does open, it's going to have to handle everything that's sharp to do in the future.
I think that gives support and weight towards adoption 2A for sure. You know, I mentioned option 2A, the betterment bucket, for instance, would have to be justified on safety grounds. And some of that you would look at not safety today, but what's the safety look like in 20 years' time? You would have to bear that in mind.
So I think, yeah, we can definitely take that away to make sure whatever we design and plan for allows for, you know, a future traffic mix on the road, to not sort of, you know, to encourage development valley.
Yep. I've got Si here, the representative from New South Wales.
Yes, if he wants to.
I believe he's online. He should be able to. Si,
Does he want to have a few words, does he, to the group? Or has he got a question for me, or just a few words to the group?
Sure, I believe he's online. He's got something to say. Are you there, Si?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Sorry, voice is a bit low from your end, so can you repeat the question so that I can?
What question in particular? Sorry, Si.
No, sorry, I sort of missed the previous. Are you asking around the betterment and the RS position on that? Is that?
Yeah. If you want to talk to, obviously, one of the options would rely on, let's call it, betterment funding.
Yeah.
So obviously, obviously some of the options which has a degree of betterment also provide other, benefits in terms of road safety. So do you want to talk to, how our RA would consider a betterment application?
Yeah, sure. So good evening, everyone. Sorry, I couldn't able to join in person in Lithgow. Also due to sick, I joined in a bit late as well. Apologies. But in terms of the optioneering and the betterment proposal and the funding wise from RA, I guess, so there are two main things that we are looking at here is the DRFA eligible option, which is that option 2, and then the option 2A and the option 1 is mainly beyond the DRFA eligible scope, meaning we would actually have to get a separate approval or funding envelope approved from the state as a betterment component, which is totally different to or separate to the eligible disaster recovery funding arrangements. And the option that's actually approved at the moment is the new alignment. So what I guess I'm sure Chris and everyone sort of went back and explained the same. It would be the one that's approved at the moment. We are trying to understand whether, like, exploring all the options that are eligible under the DRFA, plus also how about we include some safety plus betterment components and also include some resilience components, and how much it's gonna actually cost to include those resilience plus safety components, because we are undertaking the works anyway. So how about we actually include them and then seek some funding from the state as in full. So it's totally separate to the DRFA eligible works. So that's what we are trying to achieve from those two, option 1 plus option 2A in the optioneering assessment, so that we can understand, okay, how much it's going to cost apart from the DRFA eligible works, so that we can get those approvals in line. And if possible, we can explore the options to get to seek the funding.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ty. I believe we've got time for 2 more questions. Yes, sir.
it's just more a request. The community survey,
Yes,
you said that would be sent to the people who registered for tonight. But I think it's pretty essential it goes to everyone in the database.
yes, it will. Yeah,
While the
apologies. No,
project
yes.
can have-
No, sorry, if that wasn't clear. Everyone tonight will have a link to the survey. It'll also be online as well. So for those that, so please, we'll confirm that as well towards the end. But yes, definitely get the link.
Said one more. Question from the floor? Okay.
Okay, well, for those online,
Yeah, thanks everyone online. And we might wrap it up there.